There's a myth going round town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking, just rocking. In a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rocking. Yeah, it's rocking. We're pulling our weight, learning the code, clicking our heels, sharing the load, and every so often we're hit.
Hello, this is Roland Giduz for In Praise of Age, and on this program we'll turn the tables on a frequent interviewer on this program who's a longtime friend and a colleague on the Friends of the Senior Center Board of Directors, and he is, of course, Bob Seymour, the retired Reverend Robert Seymour, and we want to talk about his book, Aging Without Apology. Aging Without Apology. You have a copy of it there, Bob Seymour, and I have one. I'm going to hold it up right now so they can see it as we talk about this. This book came out in 1995, and I know it's given you a lot of satisfaction. It has some really good common sense in it. Do you want to talk about what was the inspiration for this book?
Roland, I was prompted to do this primarily because of reflecting upon what was happening to me as I became an older person. I picked up on the prevalence of people being apologetic about their age. And it occurred to me one day that one of the major assignments of our generation is to give people a more positive picture of the senior years, that these can be our best years, and we need not be apologetic about being older people.
So the title really is almost self-explanatory, but it'd be helpful if you'll explain the divisions in the book, a little bit of the organization of it.
Well, first, the book deals with coming to terms with your own self-image. I guess one of the surprising things that happened to me as I moved into the old man category is that I still found it difficult to feel like an old man. I had thought that when people looked old, they felt old, but I don't feel that way. I have to look in the mirror every now and then for a reality check. So that was part of the initial impetus for the book. Then I began to think about some of the usual stereotypes that we have about older people, that you become more religious or spiritual as you grow older. I'm not sure that's true, but aging does bring with it a new agenda of responsibilities, and the book seeks to address some of these, and it also makes some suggestions about what constitutes healthy aging, and some thoughts about approaching death and how to anticipate this stage of life.
Is this something that came out of your head? Did you base this on any other studies?
It's all out of my head, and no other studies. I guess a part of it has also been prompted by the fact that during these years of retirement, I have become very much involved in issues related to the senior adults. And in that kind of environment, many of these things began to weigh heavily on my mind, and I just sort of outlined these topics, and the next thing I knew, I had committed myself to writing a book. And it wasn't a difficult thing to do because most of it was rather readily available in my own thinking. And of course, as you know, once you start writing, one remembrance calls forth another. And it was really a pleasure to write this book and to share it with others and to get some very positive feedback from it.
So many of the retired people who come to Chapel Hill are newcomers. It would be helpful if you'd talk about your career from the time your well springs in South Carolina in college, when you came to Chapel Hill and what brought you to the point you are now. You mentioned your interest in older activities, as I did when introducing the program.
Oh, well, as you know, Roland, I was pastor here for 30 years and retired rather early. I retired at 62, and it was that very year that I accepted a responsibility as a member of the Orange County Advisory Board to the Department on Aging. And one responsibility in this area led to another. I have particularly appreciated my association with many senior adults who come in and out of the Chapel Hill Senior Center. You know, I was very much involved in the founding of the Chapel Hill Senior Center. So here again, there has been a rich resource of experience through many conversations with older adults. And the book, in some sense, represents a composite of what others have taught me as well as what I have experienced myself.
Is there a fountain of youth? We all want to continue as a vigorous person. What about the fountain of youth?
Well, I think we all realize that we live in a youth-oriented culture, and for that reason, many people have feared growing old. And you asked a moment ago, when is one considered an older person? I think our culture used to think that you were old when you were ready to retire at 65, and many people, shortly after they retired, died. But now people are beginning to look forward to the senior years, realizing that this is often the longest section of one's life. One can retire at 65 and live for another 30 years, and these can be good years. I'm fond of saying that you define old in terms of your relationship to people who are older than you are. Those who are old are those who are 10 years older than you are, no matter what your age. Now that I'm 75, the really old are the 85, and when I get to be 85, the old will be 95. But old is a pejorative word for many people, and we need to redeem that word and try to give it some positive associations. You
have said, in essence, in answering this question, that the fountain of youth is not something that we need to look for.
No, it isn't. I think we need to learn how to grow old gracefully and to realize that there are inevitable changes that come with the passing of the years, but that does not compromise the possibility of these being some of the best years of our lives. I look back on these 13 years since I retired and feel that these have been some of my best and happiest years. And I think that far from dreading the last years of life, younger people are beginning to look forward to the last years of life. It's not uncommon these days to hear younger people say, "I'm looking forward to my retirement," because these can be years when you can do things that you might not have had time to do during the peak of your career. You can set your own agenda, and I think that's something to be desired.
I recall you refer to a conspiracy to keep us in a state of denial about growing old.
Oh, indeed.
Well, what is that conspiracy now? Is this popular culture that you earlier talked about?
Do you not look at the advertisements?
Always,
you know, how to get rid of your wrinkles. You see these advertisements on television for all of these medications that are supposed to keep you young and active as a senior adult. There are all kinds of conspiracies that are intended to deny the fact that one does get old as one lives longer. I think one of the major conspiracies that we're witnessing in our culture, Roland, is the assertive advertising of the cosmetic surgery industry, and it has become a major industry, tempting many adults to remove the wrinkles and to remove the sagging chin and to try to give to the world the illusion that they are much younger than they actually are.
But Bob Seymour, what's wrong with that if it makes you feel better?
Well, there's probably nothing wrong with it, but I think it is a reflection of one's being in a state of denial about the inevitability of aging. Let me tell you a funny story. The granddaughter visiting her Nana, and they were getting ready for bed, and Nana started putting this stuff all over her face. And the grandchild said, "Nana, why are you putting that cream on your face?" And Nana said, "For my wrinkles." And the little girl said, "Well, it's working, Nana. You've got a lot of them."
Oh, right. But you see, you talk about how you feel. You're as old as you feel. Is that a good statement?
I think that's a good statement.
All right.
Yes.
If you're as old as you feel, and if you want to just go into cosmetic ideas, wear a loud necktie or...
now that's rather conservative. Don't point to that one.
Or if you want to make your own appeal to popular culture, the conspiracy against aging, as you mentioned.
But I feel that
it may make you feel, you think that you feel better. Is that wrong?
I think that's true. I tell in the book an anecdote that occurred some years ago to me. I was down at the beach, I think on a bright, beautiful October day. There was a chill in the air, and I was walking down the beach and feeling very vigorous and not feeling my years. And coming in the opposite direction was a kid who must have been no more than 8 or 10 years old. And as he approached me, he gave me the high sign and said, "Hi, old man." And that just punctured my balloon. It did me in. It ruined my day. You know, I was feeling really very vigorous. And then I thought, well, you know, he's right. I am an old man, but I'm fortunate that I can feel as well as I feel.
And perhaps how fortunate that you were walking along the beach doing something vigorous and
Yes.
that made you fast. I see your point there.
Yes.
You see more aging without apology. Some people just don't care about doing it. They say retirement means not having to work hard anymore. What's wrong with that?
That's all right. Oh, and I insist in the book that if you want to be a couch potato, that's okay. Don't feel like you have to be active. But I think that we have many false images of the retirement years. You get all these brochures and you see the happy, smiling faces of seniors who are doing nothing but playing golf and traveling. That gets old pretty fast, you know? I think most seniors, after a few years of that kind of escapism, begin to crave some kind of structure to their lives and some kind of feeling of being needed. And that has contributed to the enormous volunteer pool that we have of senior adults. Senior adults who want to give themselves to something worthwhile, who want to use their experience in a creative, a significant, important way. But if you don't feel like doing that, it's okay. You know, there's something in our society, there's something in our culture that makes all of us feel like we need to be busy all the time. How many times have you heard seniors say, "I'm busier than I've ever been in my life"? Have you heard that?
Yes, indeed.
I hear it almost every day at the senior center, and I always think to myself, that's a lie. That's a lie. What they're really saying is, I feel guilty when I'm not busy, so I've got to pretend I'm busy. I don't want anybody to think I'm lazy. We have this obsession with being busy, and we don't really have to have that. It's okay to be lazy if you choose to be.
You can be busy in many ways without conducting artificial or extra activities outside your head. Is that what you say?
That's what I'm saying. Yes, that's right. That's right, yes.
But do I hear you saying, though, that you feel that people should want to be busy in some way, occupying their mind and or their bodies?
Many seniors do feel that they want something to do. Not simply that they ought to do something, but their lives seem empty unless they become meaningfully involved. And this volunteerism that is open to seniors today has indicated a vast reservoir of talents that seniors still have to offer to our community and our society. Unfortunately, those resources have not always been adequately recognized. I think here in Chapel Hill they haven't been adequately recognized by the university. We've got seniors here with wonderful career experiences, which would make many of them marvelous mentors to students or resources in the university classroom.
You know, I'm having difficulty, Bob Seymour, in trying to reach the right term. Older, elderly people.
Yes.
Are they all interchangeable? And can you identify the ages for this? You know, hasn't it been advancing year by year? Is 75 considered an older person where it used to be 65?
Well, I think many physicians will tell you today that 65 today is equivalent to what 55 used to be. There's about a 10 years difference in terms of our physical age as compared to our chronological age. Yes, Roland, it's very important to delineate the stages of aging. When you talk about aging, you're talking about what can be a 40-year lifespan. We're in the process of putting together a master aging plan for seniors in Orange County. And we have realized that you've got to ask the question, which seniors are you talking about? There's one group that we refer to as the well and fit. And fortunately, that's the largest group. That includes you and perhaps me. The next group is called those who are impaired. In some measure, I'm one of the impaired seniors in that I have trouble hearing. I've got hearing aids in both ears. And then the third group are those who require constant institutional care. The strange thing about this is that there doesn't seem to be much rhyme nor reason when these stages come about. Some seniors can be very old at 65, and other seniors can be alert and active at 90. So the pace of aging seems to vary widely, but generally there are three discernible stages: well and fit, partially impaired, and those requiring institutional care, the very frail.
I'd like to go back to Aging Without Apology, your book, because significantly there's a foreword in it by the late Charles Kuralt, who was just about to become, well, he had retired anyhow before he had his life as foreshortened a couple of years ago. Another retiree. How did it come about that he wrote the foreword, and would you give some of his message?
Yes. This was a very wonderful contact, and it has a tragic dimension in that he was looking forward to his own retirement and, of course, died soon after these words were added to this book. I had the pleasure of knowing Charles Kuralt when he was a teenager. I was on the staff of the Myers Park Baptist Church in Charlotte, and he was in the youth group. And I have vivid memories of Charles being a leader in the youth group in the Myers Park Baptist Church. When the book was about to be published, the editor said, "We would like to find some celebrity who is retiring," and asked that celebrity to write the introduction to the book. And they came up with the name of Charles Kuralt, and immediately I said, well, that makes very good sense because I know him personally. And they wrote to him, and I wrote to him simultaneously, and he very graciously responded yes, that he would be happy to write these words. As you've noticed, it's a very brief introduction and really doesn't say too much about himself. He's writing primarily about his father and how much retirement meant to his father.
How do you interpret what his message was in that foreword then?
Well, I think he says essentially that you are old when you are no longer able to dream and look to the future. You may not know that in recent studies of older people, there seems to be a consensus that one of the major things that contributes to one's longevity is the ability to absorb losses and look to the future. Now think about it for a moment. The older you are, the more losses you experience. And as you experience losses, the temptation is to live in the past and look to the past.
Physically and mentally,
Physically
right?
and mentally.
All right.
You know, you lose your job, you lose your health, you lose a spouse perhaps, you lose your home. It just goes on and on and on. The older you are, the more losses you're likely to experience. It's just that way. And those who are able to accept the reality of this and not be pulled into the past, but are able to still face the future, are those who are more likely to live longer. That's the conclusion of these studies.
It might seem surprising to some people that when I asked you about the source for this book, you speak of the importance of it, the tremendous numbers, the increasing proportion of older persons in this country, and especially here, you say that this is uncharted ground here, that you felt like a pioneer exploring uncharted territory. I believe those are your words here.
We're living longer and enjoying it more than any generation in history. Never has a generation had more older people who are in such good health, who have access to the physical needs plus continuing access to health care.
But you feel that this is not regardless of its significance, it's not a great area of study, or compared to little information now.
It's an area that's going to require much more study. And one of the disturbing things that many of us feel, Roland, is that the number of persons who are interested in studying geriatrics today is very small compared to the anticipated need of such persons in the next 20 to 30 years. There are very few students at the University of North Carolina who are studying geriatrics. You would think this would be a required course for every student in medical school, but it's not. Every physician today is going to be dealing with older people. So we are in great need of training persons in social work, in public health, in medical schools, nursing schools, how to relate to older people, and how to have an accurate impression of this segment of the population. Many of them don't have an accurate impression, because in the hospital you see those who are impaired or who are in need of major physical assistance. They don't see the likes of you and me as being in the majority. Minority, that was a bad statement.
In your busy life, day to day, and so many activities, as you've already mentioned, but an agenda for healthy aging.
Yes.
Is it this both a physical and a mental agenda, is it?
Yes, and I think several things that I mentioned there are rather basic. One, an agenda for healthy aging is getting your priorities in order. Another is accepting the fact that you can't take it with you. Learn how to downsize. Learn how to recognize the important things in life. Yes, there are some basic guidelines that tend to add to one's health in aging.
Health, we should avoid an obsession with health, according to the title of Chapter 6.
Yes, yes.
Obsession with health, physical health, you talk about there?
There is a temptation on the part of many seniors to be so obsessed with their health that you get the impression that that's the only thing to live for. And of course, you want good health in order to live. The obsession with health should not be an end in itself. Living should be the goal in view. But
can't people enjoy their activities that contribute to their physical health?
Oh, of course, but unfortunately, most seniors are so anxious about their physical condition that if you're not careful, when you ask them how they are, they'll tell you at great length. And we we need to celebrate what health we have and to use it and not be in this state of constant anxiety about losing what health we now possess.
Bob Seymour, so many of these chapters, the titles are self-explanatory, but here's one, a generalization that may beg for a better explanation: achieving personal integration.
Yes, that does require some explanation. I think in this chapter I delineate 3 stages which I would define as important to personal integration. The first stage is getting to know yourself. I think the older I am, the better I know who I am. I have better self-knowledge of who Bob Seymour is today than I did 20 years ago. Know yourself. And then I think the next stage is accept yourself. Accept who you are, warts and all, good and bad. Learn to live with it, accept it.
What about self-improvement? Isn't that a continuing process?
It's a continuing process, but still one needs to accept one's strengths and one's weaknesses, have a realistic assessment of oneself. And then the final stage for personal integration, I think, is what I've referred to as transcending the self. Because if you live long enough, this physical being is going to become infirm, and one needs to recognize that life and one's self and one's well-being may be more intimate related to the condition of one's spirit than the condition of one's physical body.
That leads to the final chapter and the title, which is not often thought of in this sense, celebrating your death day.
Yes.
You really would celebrate that.
Well, yes, I think persons from the faith community appropriately celebrate Death Day. And it is not uncommon today, as you know, I'm sure, to go to a funeral and the bulletin will say, celebration of the life of. I've often thought that it would be interesting if we knew exactly when we were going to die and how we would feel every year when that date rolled around or as we got closer and closer to it. And if we would be prepared to celebrate our getting closer to it in the same way that we celebrate getting further and further away from our birth date.
Then you say that to celebrate is really a joyful thing.
Yes.
you would celebrate your approaching death day.
Yes, I think that's an appropriate thing to celebrate, because death represents a culmination of life, and for many of us it is a faith affirmation that the world into which we are born, where all of our needs have been anticipated, is a preview of another dimension of life where once again all of our needs will be met.
I want to be sure that our viewers see this book once again, and if you'll talk about where it's available, because you've given a brief review of the various parts of it.
Yes.
Aging Without Apology here.
And the subtitle is Living the Senior Years with Integrity and Faith. It is available at Judson Press, which is the American Baptist Press, at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. The P.O. Box is Box 851. Box 851, Judson Press, Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. It can be secured in some bookstores, and a bookstore will be able to order it for you.
In Chapel Hill in Orange County?
Yes, yes. Or Barnes & Noble, wherever, yes.
Is there anything further in conclusion, other thoughts that you have on how to age without apology?
I think we've covered most of the things that I mentioned here. One of them that we haven't referred to is the stereotype that older people don't change, that older people are set in their ways. And I think it is very important to point out that our generation has seen more changes than probably any other generation in history, and that older people are able to adapt and change in rather incredible ways.
And apparently that's leading into a feeling that it's important to be willing to change and to evolve and to have new experiences.
That's certainly a necessity if one is to have a healthy transition into the senior years.
Bob Seymour, it's been a pleasure to share this with you, Aging Without Apology. I feel a kindred here, though this is not about me, it's about you and what you're writing.
You asked me how old I am. How old are you, Roland?
The same, 75.
75!
That's it. Okay. And I feel so much the same as you do,
Yes.
but it's been very helpful to us on Age with Praise, in Praise of Age, rather.
Yes.
And we thank you for talking about
Well, I appreciate
aging
your
without
wanting to.
apology.
There's a myth going around town that when you get older you just sit down and start rocking. Just rocking. In a way that's true, if you know what I mean. Just take a look at the senior scene. Well, it's rocking. Yeah, it's rocking. We're pulling our weight, learning the code, clicking our heels, sharing the load, and every so often we're hitting the road. Yeah, we're rocking.